Item one, are we streaming?
We are setting up the stream, it's loading.
Okay, hang on. Let me pause then.
Thank you. We're now streaming.
Okay, yes. Let's go ahead and reconvene into open session. Our first item is a closed session report. Margaret, did you want to give the closed session report or do you want me to do?
You can go ahead, Larry.
Okay, so closed session report. Previously this evening, the board met pursuant to government code, section 54957B, public employment general counsel. Nothing to report out. Our next item is our consent agenda. And just to note that we'll be removing item 2B, the review of December and January financial reports from the consent agenda, so only 2A. Are there any remote comments on the consent agenda?
There are no hands raised.
Okay, anyone in the room? Is there a motion to approve?
Second. The motion was by Montaño, or I'm sorry, Meadows, and seconded by Montaño.
Yes.
Great.
Can you conduct a roll call vote?
Yeah. Today.
Yes,
I'm sorry, how are you today?
it is. Yeah,
It is.
close enough. I just
Okay.
couldn't hear it.
Oh, finicky. Abukoga.
Aye.
Abukoga, aye. Jimenez.
Aye.
Jimenez, aye. Bybee. Aye. Bybee, aye. Park. Is absent, I'm sorry. All right. Willia. Aye. Willia, aye. Montaño. Aye. Montaño, aye. Meadows. Aye. Meadows, aye. Way. Aye. Way, aye. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Who?
Abstain.
Who abstained? Klein.
Aye.
Klein, aye. Turner.
Aye.
Turner, aye. Mock.
Aye.
Mock, aye. With 12 ayes, 1 abstention, 1 and 2 absences, the motion carries.
Thanks very much. Next up is our general counsel report. Oh, sorry.
Which we are referring to.
Yes, we're deferring to next meeting. Sorry, item 3. Item 3, not item 4. Yes. Okay. So we'll be deferring that item until our March meeting. Item 4, executive director. Go right ahead.
You
Oh,
didn't disappoint me.
that's right.
I would like to advocate on my behalf.
Margaret, did you have a comment or do you want me to?
There is a indemnity clause in that contract.
Sure. I'm happy to say a few words. Tonight, we would like to appoint Shali Sirkay as our no longer interim, but our permanent executive director. We felt that she's been doing a fine job and we would like to remove the interim in her title and or was it acting? I can't remember which one, but basically make her our permanent executive director with her term going through the end of this year, December 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Margaret. And just to talk about what the executive committee did. So the executive committee recommended hiring Shali as our executive director. Executive director compensation will consist of an anticipated monthly billing of $10,000 at $100 an hour and an annual not to exceed amount of $125,000. The proposed agreement has a 2-year term with an automatic annual renewal unless either party provides notice of intent to terminate. Either the city's association or the executive director may terminate the agreement at any time with 30 days notice, and the agreement does not contain a severance provision or any other benefits. The executive director will only be paid for hours worked. Any questions for anyone in the room? Sure.
Thanks to the conversation we have had over the last few months about the formation of a JPA for Cities Association. And I know the executive director will be closely involved in working on that. And I'm just thinking aloud, it popped in my mind just now, if there are more hours needed, or do we need to spell out? Shally has been great. I should actually start there. Shally has been just phenomenal the last 6 months. I think it's 6 months, yeah. That she's been as an intern, she's quickly come to speed. I'm seeing changes. She's approachable, accessible, last minute, everything. She's great. Just thinking ahead for the future of this organization from a JP's perspective. Shally has to engage more. What happens? And any other thoughts that somebody may have just from that angle, from the JP angle. Question out there.
Your question, I'm sorry, your question was if she has to engage more? Did I
More
hear you?
hours, more work, because currently we are in a different setup. I'm putting this question out for discussion. I don't know the answer.
I think the answer is when the JPA is formed, all the agreements will have to be reviewed by the JPA because it's a separate entity. And the JPA could decide either to pick up the same agreement or change it or whatever, but there'll all be new agreements with the new entity. So we can't tell what the JPA will do or should do. I mean, we can talk about it, but the JPA is going to be a separate entity.
Javed, my question is more till we become a JPA, because there may be more hours needed for us, the formation of a JPA.
Right, and I agree with that. I understand your concern. As that being said, as the financial officer or the treasurer, that will be one of your things to look at. Conceivably, you know, if hours 7 months or higher, we need to make sure that there's appropriate evaluation of making sure that we have fewer hours in other months. So it's a management of time, and I'm hoping that the executive director will raise those issues with us if she's using more than what she was expecting for a specific fund.
Thank you for giving me that job, by the way.
Yeah, it wasn't me, yeah.
I just
Like
want,
Rich.
I just wanted to make a comment that there are some months, like July, for example, I work half the number of hours that I typically do. And so, in other months, obviously, there's more. So I'm trying to keep it where it evens out by the end of the year. So I will definitely manage my hours. If it becomes to the point where I need more hours, I will certainly bring that up with the executive board.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry, I may have missed it in here, but how many hours are we talking about on a weekly basis?
So I typically work 20 to 25 hours per week. And my typical billing is about $10,000 a month. And so that's, yeah, so I'm half-time or part-time, whatever the proper term is.
Thank you.
And I was just, I think it's just important to say that we can bring this back and amend the contract. I guess if we see that you're consistently going over the, whatever, right? We can bring it back and have that conversation.
All my hours are not take December on.
Absolutely. Anyone else? Anyone remote? No? Okay, we do need a motion on this. Oh, public, 1 second. Public comment? Thank you. Anyone public? Okay. Is there a motion?
I just made a motion.
Thank you.
I'm happy to second.
Tina, second.
Seconded by Willia. Okay, I will call the roll. Montaño?
I wanted to ask, is there a probationary period or is this just?
She's been here for 6 months, so.
Yeah, yes.
Got glasses and used to be here, so more the other way, I think.
No problem. I will speak louder. Abatoga.
Aye.
Abakoga, aye. Willia. Aye. Willia, aye. Turner.
Aye.
Turner, aye. Meadows.
Aye.
Meadows, aye. Way.
Aye.
Way, aye. Spivey.
Aye.
Spivey, aye. Elahi.
Aye.
Elahi, aye. Ku.
Aye.
Ku, aye. Jimenez.
Aye.
Jimenez, aye. Klein.
Aye.
Klein, aye. Mock.
Aye.
Mock, aye. Blakely is absent. Udis? Udis, aye, and Park is absent as well with 13 ayes. The motion carries.
Thank you.
This is a wonderful job and I sincerely enjoy working with all of you.
We'll turn that around for that.
What did that? You'll turn that around. for us. Next up is our approval of our 2023 priorities. Did you want to talk or Margaret, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead and start.
So there's a staff report in your packet. So at our last board meeting on January 26th, we looked at our 2022 and 2021 priorities, discussed whether we still needed them, whether enough work had been done on them, whether they were still applicable. And through all the discussion and the brainstorming and then like a prioritization exercise, we came up with the following 4 priorities: sustainability and resilience / climate protection, mental health, housing, and gun safety. And some of the other topics that were raised but didn't get as many votes, we've agreed to bring speakers to speak on those topics, such as homelessness and the unhoused. So if you approve of the priorities, we're forming committees around each of these priorities. And I know that not everyone was at last month's board meeting, so not everyone had a chance to sign up. So I will be reaching out to everybody to see what committees you want to work on. The idea is that the committees will do a deeper dive into their respective areas and then present in the second half of the year. Present something. So I put fiscal impact as none because I'm assuming that none of the committees are going to do anything that requires a lot of money. And you have 2 options to consider tonight. I'm recommending that you approve the priorities that we set last month. If you decide not to take any actions, then we would probably have to go back to brainstorming these priorities. And we won't have as much time to work on each of these areas because again, we would lose another month.
1 second, we'll go through. Any discussion concerning this?
Yeah, so were most of the people here that, when we chose the priorities, were most of these folks here, most of the board members?
Yeah.
They were?
We did a dot exercise last month.
Okay.
But it's a good question, because if we have one group that only has a couple people and another that has 8 or something, then.
And the dot exercise was priorities. It wasn't signing people up. And so that's.
Oh, I thought we signed ourselves up. Yeah.
We did, but we need to go back and reconfirm.
Oh, okay, so we'll look at that.
Right,
Okay.
because
good.
there are people that weren't available at that meeting. There's also the concept that we need to make sure that it's not a Brown Act body. So ultimately making sure that we have less than half the board on any of these committees. So that's the maximum number of people, and conceivably, if some people put their names down for multiple categories, and
Right.
it's like, okay, we're over in certain areas, depending upon what people's interest is. Yes, Mark, sorry.
Do we have, on these 4 goals, is there a little bit more of an explanation as to what it is? What is it? What are we going to do?
And that's what the subcommittee ends up with.
Okay, so we'll define it. Okay.
And ultimately, so being new here, that's one of the things I love about this organization is we have a lot more flexibility to undertake, let's say, discuss about almost any issue that our cities face. And that flexibility is shown specifically here, that these subcommittees can say, oh, we want, MTC or this nonprofit or this, state legislator to come in and speak on a specific topic on how our cities respond, what issues are, best practices, whatever that is. So it's kind of form the committee, let figure out whether or not they want one or conceivably even more than one presentation before the end of the year. So, okay. Anyone else? Margaret? Anything? Okay. Is there a motion? Oh, thank you. Is there a public comment? Anyone remote?
Let me stop the share. I see no hands raised.
Okay. Anyone in the room, public comment? Seeing none? Motion?
Yeah, I'm including the priorities.
Okay, thank you.
Our secondary was previously.
I know
If we had a
Chair, but-
second.
we didn't have a second, I thought.
Okay.
Okay.
So,
On this our second.
okay, great. I will call the roll. Elahi,
Yes.
Elahi, aye. Abakoga,
Aye.
Abakoga, aye. Way, aye. Way, aye. Mock,
Aye.
Mock, aye. Malia, aye. Malia, aye. Montano, aye. Montano, aye. Spivey, Spivey, aye. Turner,
Aye.
Turner, aye. Klein,
Aye.
Klein, aye. Ku,
Yes.
Ku, aye. Hart is absent. Jimenez, Jimenez, aye. Hude,
Aye.
Hude, aye. Meadows, aye. Meadows, aye. And Blankley is absent with 13 ayes. The motion carries.
Thank you very much. We'll move on to the planning collaborative presentation.
Great. Auden, are you going to be sharing screen or should we do that for slides?
I will make it so that you can share your screen as well.
Okay, you want, so Sam, do you want me to do it or you want to do it?
You can do it.
Okay,
Okay.
let me get it queued up. Hopefully you can see that.
Yeah.
Okay, so great to be here. Thanks for having us. We'll do a pretty quick overview presentation of what the Planning Collaborative is for those of you who may not be familiar with it, but mostly talk about what we've been up to and what we have queued up for the coming months. There's some pretty exciting things that we've been cooking up with folks from your various community development departments. I'm David Driscoll. I'm a principal at Community Planning Collaborative. We were Baird and Driscoll Community Planning. We had a name change at the first of the year, and joined by my colleague, Sam Dolgoff. Sam, you want to say hi?
Yeah, hi. I am the project manager for the collaborative, and I've been really enjoying working with all of your staff members over the last 6 months or so.
So a little bit on the collaborative. Was formed back in October of 2019, right before the pandemic started. So we've been doing a lot of getting to know each other online. The idea is it's a collaborative effort, building relationships between the jurisdiction staff, learning from each other, sharing ideas about how to tackle common problems, issues, challenges that we're facing. Big focus, obviously, on the housing element since we started up this work, using it as a place to where it makes sense to team up and undertake analysis or things that could help support everybody's work, sharing best practices, doing some deep dive trainings and things like that. Initially, this was funded from contributions from each of the jurisdictions. Currently, we're funded through state REAP grants, regional early action planning grants that flowed to ABAG and then have been distributed around the region. And similar collaboratives have been set up in each county, or in some cases, like with Napa and Sonoma, they're grouped together as one group across 2 counties to help support everyone in the region in terms of meeting the challenge of a lot of new state laws as they relate to the current housing element updates. And last week was a big week for us. That was as many of you know, the adoption deadline. Everyone is still in process. We don't have any certifications from HCD within the county, but everyone's making great progress. Oop, that's the wrong way. Let me go this way. Doesn't like that. Okay. So we have a monthly meeting with everybody. We actually had our February meeting earlier today. Had great attendance. I think every jurisdiction was represented. We also come to the SCAPA meetings with the planning officials, just to give updates to the directors. Some of them participate in the regular collaborative meetings. Others have key staff who come and join us. We provide weekly email updates to let people know things that are going on in the region, in the state, new resources that have been released. Happy to share a list. We got a whole Google Doc of links to a lot of different resources that have been created. One of the big focuses that we've supported across all the jurisdictions is on what's called Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, AFFH, which you're probably familiar with. That requires a fair housing assessment at the county level. So it's just supporting everybody and having that data to incorporate into their housing elements and providing guidance on how to respond to the state requirements there. Right now, we're doing a lot of meetings one-on-one with jurisdictions as they get their HCD comment letters and going through the additional data or analysis they need to provide, evidence they need to provide related to sites, et cetera. We actually had some discussion earlier today about, I think we've got 4 or 5 cities that have received letters from HCD, and just talking about some of the issues that are coming up and how we can share learnings across jurisdictions about how best to respond to those. We've had some focused collaboration on farm worker housing, on accessory dwelling units, and Sam's going to talk about the work we're doing now to develop a shared set of resources for accessory dwelling units. And then we've done a lot of discussions and trainings on some of the new state laws, inventory requirements for the housing element, et cetera. And I'm kind of flying through, but welcome any questions as we go through the presentation, and then hoping to have some dialogue after we give this overview. I'm gonna, oops, likes to go that way when I hit my button. Okay, I'm gonna hand it off to Sam to talk about the current work plan for the next 6 months.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so over the next 6-month work plan, which is the way that we track work plans for the REAP grant, we will continue to do our regular collaborative coordination, which includes the regular monthly meetings and our weekly newsletters. We also will continue to do our general technical assistance and program development. So as issues come up or questions come up from staff, they will reach out to us and we will provide direct TA for those questions that they might have. We either find it or we create it for them. So for instance, sometimes they'll reach out about some new laws that need clarification. So we've done little memos for things like that. And then we also do general program development. So last work plan, we did program development for the ADU program that David was just mentioning. So these are things where we're like developing shared programs across the jurisdictions. We're also going to be continuing to do our AFFH technical assistance with our sub-consultants to make sure that that really difficult portion of the housing element is done well and is able to be easily certified by HCD. And we'll also continue to do our support for responding to HCD comment letters. I know David and our other colleague, Christy, have already met with staff members from many of your jurisdictions to talk through the comments that they've received from HCD and help them to try to respond to those. And then we're also going to be doing a large project on ADUs to help homeowners in the jurisdictions in Santa Clara get through the process of building ADUs in the county. So I'll go through that on the next slide. But one of the main foundational products that we're going to be developing is a plans gallery for homeowners to use. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So we are ADU experts at Community Planning Collaborative. We've done a lot of ADU work across the state for many jurisdictions. So one of the things that we're going to be doing here is creating a shared ADU program website, which is where homeowners can go to learn more about the ADU process, from visioning what their ADU will be like all the way through permits, processing, construction, and then getting someone into their ADU. The website will link closely with also our guidebook. It's going to be a digital version of the guidebook that will be at the county level, which will also go through the process in more detail for homeowners who are looking to build an ADU. We're also going to be building a tool that homeowners can use to look up their actual address to see what they can build. And that is actually based on the parcel characteristics and also your city's zoning information. So it'll actually tell them, you know, the type and size of ADU that they can build based on what your local standards are. And all of this will include also ADU program branding so that it's clear that this is the Santa Clara County program. So we're really excited to do all of that. And we're also really excited to deploy one of our new types of products, which is a plans gallery. It's meant for homeowners to be able to look through a bunch of different types of ADU plans and decide kind of what they want to do, what will fit on their site, and then they can actually reach out to architects to either buy or contract with them to design that for their site. And eventually we are going to potentially in the next work plan work with your staff on a pre-reviewed, and David, please chime in because this is your forte, but a pre-reviewed part of this plans gallery where jurisdictions can actually pick certain plans to pre-review to get people further along with the process for that type of ADU. So people can pick those plans and go to your planning department and say, this is the plan that I want to use. And it will already have been partially reviewed by your staff and your building department. David, I don't know if there's any nuance that you want to add to that as well.
Yeah, I thought maybe actually I will just quickly share a screen of a gallery just so you get a sense of what this looks like. If I can figure out how to stop sharing there and share a different screen. So this is one we've actually built for Napa Sonoma ADU, which serves all the jurisdictions in Napa and Sonoma counties. So the idea here is to help homeowners both kind of visualize what an ADU is and what one might work in their backyard. They can filter by a whole set of characteristics in terms of size, by square footage, by bedrooms, by whether they want something that is solar ready, something that's all electric, something that's accessible, etc. And then they can go to a specific design and check it out and read about it, understand how much it's going to cost for construction, approximately, are all estimates, and understand whether it might have been pre-reviewed by a certain jurisdiction. So this is where what we're basically setting up is a platform. If your building department wants to do a pre-review, basically look at the plan set from the perspective of whether it meets your building codes, so the state codes plus any local modifications, that's set up for them to be able to do that, and you can check it off as being pre-reviewed for your jurisdiction. Or there's just a huge value to homeowners of being able to find a plan that works for them and avoid months of cost and literally tens of thousands of dollars of expense in doing a custom design if they choose. A lot of people still choose to do a custom design because it meets their needs better. But the idea here is to really give as much choice as possible, make it a really easy user experience to find a plan, and most importantly, find an architect, a design professional who can be their partner for going through the ADU development process. Because the challenge of ADUs is most homeowners aren't developers. So it's asking them to do something that is pretty challenging. Your city staff are awesome, but codes are really challenging to navigate, and a permitting process is really challenging to navigate that most people don't really even know where to start. So that's one of the products we'll be creating along with the workbook and those other tools that Sam described. And I'll just go back quickly to my other screen, if I can find it. Too many screens open. There we go. Hold on, sorry. Doesn't want to find that screen. Here we go. Yeah. Okay. So just thought we'd talk quick. Oh, we want to talk about the Grand Nexus study. Do you want to do that, Sam?
Yeah, sure. So we also we're talking to the jurisdictions about possibly partnering on a Grand Nexus study, which is where we would help to hire a shared consultant that would recommend inclusionary housing requirements or commercial linkage fees for multiple jurisdictions. So this has been done before. Our other collaborative in San Mateo, 21 Elements, has done this previously. And some of the benefits that they reported were that it was able to provide a legal justification necessary to adopt the fees. It also allowed jurisdictions to get customized location-specific reports with local conditions. The cost was less than half than trying to do their own Nexus study. So there was power in numbers. There's also less concern about developers shopping between jurisdictions. And also it still meant that all the decisions about what to adopt were still 100% made at the local level. So we are working through the process of assessing whether and when there might be interest and align timing for Santa Clara and possibly also San Mateo County jurisdictions to do a Grand Nexus study either in 2023 or 2024. So we're soliciting information from your staff now to figure out which jurisdictions might be interested in doing that and when.
Great. I'm just going to talk quickly. So our big focus right now is just helping everyone get across the finish line for the housing elements. Again, every jurisdiction except maybe one has submitted their draft HCD. Some have gotten comment letters back and responding to those comments. So that's going to be our primary focus is getting that done. And then like something like the ADU or the Grand Nexus study is really about sort of implementation of policies that are in your housing elements. One thing I just wanted to call out is we've developed what we call the comment bot, CBOT. It's available online through ABAG now, cbot.info. And basically it's a tool that you go through and you answer a set of questions related to topics that were covered in your HCD comment letter, because a lot of them cover the same things. And you can answer the questions, yes, no, they called out that we need more information, then it links you automatically to a set of ideas about how to best to respond, as well as resources that are out there in various sites to help people think through sort of strategies or policies. And that is our fly through of what the collaborative has been up to and what's on the horizon, and happy to answer questions. Anything else?
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Yeah. I'm assuming you have multiple people with questions, so let's start going around the room.
Thank you for the presentation, and I'm really excited, especially to see the ADU program that I have people from across different cities in the Bay Area who reach out to me because of my background in architecture. They have been asking me over the years as to what can be done, what can they do in each jurisdiction, details about so on and so forth. So just a very simple question. The idea is great. I'm curious, would there be just the construction cost available for some of these, even a range? I know the details will vary depending on the location.
Yeah, so the way that the gallery is set up is there's kind of two costs. One is the cost to actually just purchase the plan. So to participate in this, the architects or ADU firms make available these plans at a set cost. So rather than doing a custom design plan for $10,000, you can buy the plan from them they set the cost. Typically it's $500 to $1,000. And you actually buy the construction plans from them. Lots of people will say, I want that, but I want some modifications. So there might be an hourly cost to do whatever modifications you need to customize it for your site. And then the gallery gives you an estimate of the construction cost, which obviously varies a bit, but it has a range to give you some sense of which of those plans are kind of the Cadillac. Maybe it's not the Cadillac anymore, and maybe now it's the Tesla, and which of those are more the VW version, just so you have a sense, like, what are you shopping for, and it feeds into the calculator. So the idea of the calculator is it helps you estimate what your return will be if you are doing this to make a rental property. How much are you likely to be able to rent something that's 600 square feet based on where you live on the local market? And it basically populates those costs and the rents and gives you an estimated payback, so you can make a better financial decision. Again, all these tools are to help homeowners who don't usually do this work. And so just to make good decisions as they go through the process.
That's great. That's exactly what people are looking for. Thank you. Terrific.
Yes, so back to the ADU, two questions. One is there are pre-approved ADUs, are they included in your design?
So there's a couple different ways in which pre-approved, we prefer the term pre-reviewed, and I've learned that from talking to building officials because they're like, nothing's approved, you still have to come in for a permit. So we say it's pre-reviewed for compliance with the building code. Anything that's in the gallery that's a prefab plan is actually, we call it pre-reviewed because it's already been reviewed by the state for building code compliance as a prefab product. And then there's also what we call stick-built plans, that are for the architecture, and then they're going to come in and build it on your site. And those, the building officials can do a pre-review on any plan that they want to from the gallery. And your jurisdiction can say, and so San Jose has a pre-reviewed plans program, and some of your jurisdictions do too. I mean, some other jurisdictions do too. And you can say, well, if it's been pre-reviewed by them, it's considered pre-reviewed by us because our building code's the same or very, very close. So it's really up to your building departments to decide whether you want to consider it pre-reviewed. Our aim, so a lot of pre-reviewed programs that are out there around the state have maybe 3 or 4 plans, designs that you can choose from. And in our experience, and happened again today or yesterday, not many people are using those plans because people look at it and it's kind of what they're looking for, but it's not exactly what they're looking for. And so they end up having to do modifications, which takes it out of that pre-reviewed status, and they still have to go through a standard review process. So we want to create as much choice, and to the extent that we can keep building up the number of those plans that are checked as pre-reviewed for the participating jurisdictions, the better. But that really comes down to building officials and their comfort level with that.
So my second question is this website not up yet, right? The ADU code.
The gallery I showed you is up in terms of the Napa Sonoma, but we're going to be building one for Santa Clara County. And for that, we're definitely going to be incorporating as many pre-reviewed plans that are, like, for example, exist under the City of San Jose's program and others, and also recruit some local architects to be part of the program.
So can the city of Cupertino use the website or just do a link? How does that work?
Yeah, we're figuring out the logistics, but yeah, most likely it would be a link. You would link from the city website. We'll be giving folks information to put on their websites to describe the program, and then link to a shared site that would have these resources on it.
Okay, so you let the city know when that's possible.
Yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
Right now, there's very few ADU information on the city of Cupertino's website, so that would be good to have it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Question about SB 9. I wondered if you've done any work on SB 9 implementation or working toward ordinances that incentivize affordable housing rather than luxury housing, and guidelines and methods of getting to that goal of affordable housing under SB 9.
Yeah, there are a set of resources that were developed regionally that are on the ABAG site around SB 9 ordinances, around objective design and development standards for SB 9 projects. Those all exist on the ABAG site, and I'm happy to send a link around after the meeting to those. In terms of the affordability piece, so our recommendation has been, if you really want to help facilitate lot splits and duplex, triplex development, to really think of SB 9 as being part of a larger sort of middle housing strategy, middle housing strategy. And there are some ways to think about how to incentivize affordability within that, but just understand, like, it's really challenging to create a single family home in Santa Clara County, or even a duplex unit in Santa Clara County that's going to be affordable at lower income if it's a for sale unit. There are ways to make them, I would use the term more attainable housing. They may not meet the AMI requirement, but there are ways to do it. It's just like, if you were to say you can only build this if it meets 80% AMI threshold for price, probably not many people are going to build them, because there's.
I understand there's a spectrum, and SB 9 is essentially a blank slate with regard to those things, but it does seem to me that sort of in return for opening up housing, it would be valuable to get housing at the lower income end of the spectrum. And so some guidelines about how cities could shape their implementation and their ordinances to attain that end of the spectrum rather than purely a complete blank slate that leads to, a great deal of luxury housing.
Right. I mean, there's a report that recently came out from the Turner Center. There has not been much activity statewide in terms of SB 9 implementation. That may change as people become more familiar with it. The most common thing that's happening is jurisdictions with large lots seeing lot splits, not necessarily creating a duplex unit, but doing lot splits. But I'll send around the link to the SB 9 resources at ABAG that were developed.
Thank you, Chad.
Thank you. It's good to see your ADU plans and all. Thank you for putting that together. I guess, I don't know if you've had much discussions with different cities at this point, or you're waiting for the phase to get on board. I don't know. I represent Montecito, and we are doing our entire housing element based on ADUs. We'll be putting together 200 ADUs, so this would be really, really helpful. And maybe at some point it'll be nice to get a presentation to the city council on this. Now, my question, and I'm going to follow up with Councilor with this comment about affordability. One way to make things affordable is to build affordable housing. On the other hand, the ADUs are going to be built by the homeowner who resides on that lot. And the way to make it affordable would be to subsidize the rent that we charge for those ADUs. Have you considered setting up or trying to link different cities or counties where they can all kick in and say, okay, we'll pitch in so much money towards affordable rents for these ADUs? And so like Montecito, our city would say, okay, we're going to kick in $500 or $1,000 a month for the lower, 10% of our housing. And other cities may also be able to meet that. Have you considered putting something like that could also be worked on?
Yeah, there's some programs that are focused specifically on affordability in ADUs, and there's kind of two components to it. One is helping lower income households create ADUs because it's a pretty big capital investment to do that. So it's typically only households that have capital available that are able to do ADUs. So having programs that provide either low or no interest financing to lower income households to create an ADU as a wealth building opportunity, and sometimes linking that to then some income requirements for the rental. The other is to focus on any rental of an ADU and providing ways in which to place income qualified households into those ADUs. And there's different, so actually we're putting together a paper that describes different practices around the state and what's been effective. And that'll be released soon. And I just want to underscore in terms of the tools that we described, we're developing them right now. They're not yet available, but they will be in the next few months. And we're more than happy to come and present those to councils as we have them available. The other thing is actually Montecito, I met with your staff just a couple of weeks ago and just underscored that in your housing element, you should definitely point to these tools that we're developing because they will be available to help homeowners go through the ADU development process. And definitely in all your jurisdiction, housing elements should point to those and as things that you're participating in to help create more ADUs. And I'll just say on the affordability piece, you are able to count ADUs towards meeting your affordable housing goals in your RHNA because we have a lot of data in terms of how ADUs are used because a lot of times people use them as housing for a family member, for a close friend or relative, for a domestic worker, either at low or even sometimes no cost. So they actually do serve an affordable housing function, even as without programs in place, but then you could do programs that even up the use of those as affordable housing.
Yeah, thank you for the information. I think it would be going to be very helpful for us. And if there's some way, since you are a collaborative site, you can make it possible for different cities to come in and pitch, that we can subsidize so much of the rent or something else. That may be helpful.
Yeah.
So are the ADUs registered or tracked in order to be able to be listed as affordable? I mean, how are they tracked?
Well, right now so in terms of what I just said, in terms of some of them work as affordable housing, so there's no tracking. That's based on a statewide survey that was done that we worked with folks at UC Berkeley. They did a statewide survey of recently developed ADUs and how they're being used and how much they're renting for. And that was then used to agree with HCD on percentages for projecting your ADU development over the next 8 years in your housing element. How many of those can you count towards being very low income housing, towards low income housing, towards moderate income housing? So we landed on some percentages that your staff are using in your housing elements based on that survey. In terms of ADUs that are created in your jurisdiction, it would be based on what program you have in place for licensing or tracking those if they have an income deed restriction on them. Well, one other thing that we didn't really talk about, we've had a very, very initial conversation, is the potential to create a shared ADU resource center that wouldn't just be these web-based resources, but actually a staffed resource center. That's something that jurisdictions in San Mateo County are looking at doing, so that there's not just a website, but there's a place you can call and a place that can undertake that kind of activity in terms of tracking deed restrictions, et cetera.
Thank you. So I had several questions. You talked about the Berkeley study, and I've had these discussions with staff as far as the split, the breakdown of where does the ADUs fall, because you don't know what the final owner after, or the final builder and the property owner ultimately rents them at. And I'd be interested to see what that rule of thumb is, and whether or not does it change from jurisdiction to jurisdiction for your feedback, or is it, Santa Clara County and it's a static number?
So the general breakdown that was agreed to based on regional data is, I'll just say 30, 30, 30, 10. 30% very low income, 30% low income, 30% moderate income, 10% above moderate income. So that's kind of a starting point. And if based on what you know about your jurisdiction, you think it skews up or down from that, then you should make that case in your housing element and apply percentages that are different. But I would use those as a starting point. And I'll just underscore, I think a lot of people say, well, that's not how ADUs work. I know half the people I know who have ADUs and they use them as a home office. In terms of projecting housing creation, the ADU counts as a unit as long as it's built as a unit with a kitchen and, as a functioning housing unit. Just as there's a lot of jurisdictions that have a lot of second homes, and I'm working in one jurisdiction that their vacancy rate is about 25%. But we count all the homes that get built as a housing unit, even if they end up being second homes and not being used. So once that unit is created, it might be used as a home office today. 5 years from now, someone else buys the house, or that person's adult child needs a place to stay, and it becomes a house. So we're counting housing units, and we're basically using the data that we have from the last few years to project how it's going to get used. Sorry, that's a long answer. But...
No, I appreciate that. And, I love the plans gallery website. From the example you showed, and I know it was not our county, what it'll look like, you can sort by what's approved by your jurisdiction, I'm assuming. And you mentioned fees. I'm assuming all the fees per jurisdiction estimate, depending upon what the square footage is and other things, would be part of all those calculations, making it easier for the final homeowner to actually figure out what those costs would be. Okay. And that was all I had. Anyone else? Yes.
So what are the average cost of permit fees for ADU? The permits, what's the cost for the permits?
Oh, it varies by jurisdiction. It varies by the size of ADU. So it depends if it comes in under the state threshold, there's certain fees that cannot be applied. But what we look to, so we have the ADU calculator and we rely on your staff to populate the fields for what fees apply for your jurisdictions based on size. Some jurisdictions do not allow above the state threshold of what's required to be allowed. Others allow larger ADUs, so those have differing fees based on the jurisdiction.
So have you worked with our city, Milpitas?
We're just starting. I think we have our first advisory committee meeting next week in terms of building up the tool.
So we took the bull by the horns. We used some of our ARPA monies that the federal government gave us, and we allocated some of those ARPA funds to waive the fees for ADUs. So, and then we created a handbook, and we have a website, so we're very proactive on that.
Great.
So yeah, you might share some of that.
Carmen, do you have an idea, an estimate of how many units that will build? Did your staff come up with? It's like
It's quite a bit, but it goes back to the whole premise that if you have the capital to build one, then you will probably build one. But it's if you have the money to build one, then it's easier. But when you don't, it's harder.
Right.
So
Just wondering.
it's goes back to who has the money.
Yeah. Anyone else through? Yes.
I haven't had the opportunity to look at all the models that you have. But here's the question. Do you have any models which are modular that could be dropped into like a backyard after a foundation has been poured?
Yeah, a bunch of the ones that are in the Napa Sonoma Gallery are modular or prefab. Some of them are the kind that they bring it in fully built and they plop it in your backyard. Others are more of like a panelized construction where all the pieces come in, the walls come in, and you assemble it on the site. There's quite a variety of different products. And there's like one on that site that is pretty small, but it's like $35,000 to purchase and put it in your yard. So that's pretty affordable. And others are a lot more than that to actually build a custom ADU.
So basically, custom or pre-built. So the pre-built ones here would be dropped in, and with the custom ones where you sort of trigger them yourself.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the full question.
What's the question?
Well, it's basically a modular system where you can just pop it in.
Right.
Or it's a customized, where you build it yourself.
Well, there's quite a range of types of products, and actually on the site we explain what those different types are, so you can make a decision about what might meet your needs the best. But they typically vary based on cost, so that would probably be the driving factor. I would just say the ADU industry is evolving very rapidly, and what we're seeking to do is build a gallery structure that could really grow to have 500 or 1,000 plans on it if there was the desire to do that. But at least start off with folks in your jurisdiction to be able to go and see 50 or more different designs, so that at a minimum they can connect with an architect that they kind of like the style that they're doing, or a product that's in their price range, depending on what is the driving factor for a particular homeowner, but provide as much choice as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, could you send us the link to the Napa ADU just for an example? And has San Mateo already done it or no? I know that they were working on something.
They've been having discussions about they have a pre-reviewed plans program. They don't have a gallery like what I just showed. They have a much smaller number of designs, but they are talking about doing something similar to the Napa Sonoma ADU Center, which is a private nonprofit through the Napa Valley Community Foundation, and looking at sort of doing something across the jurisdictions where they would all chip in to create that kind of a resource that would serve across the county. And we've had some discussions whether there's interest from the Santa Clara County jurisdictions to maybe do something that would be for the peninsula across San Mateo and Santa Clara. But that's very, very early conversations right now.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are there any remote public people who have a comment? Anyone in any public in the room have a comment? Okay, thank you very much. We look forward to this, and Auden has already sent out these slides, so thank you for that.
And they'll be back in a few months. Doing an update.
Great. Looking forward to it. Thank you. Thanks for the
you.
flexibility.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Sure.
We'll move on to item 7, updates. We have several quick updates. First, the legislative action committee update. So we didn't have a meeting this month, especially because it's the selection committee. We will be having a meeting next month. It's still early as far as the state is concerned. Lots of bills are being proposed right now, but we'll have a presentation planned for March. So there will be, we will be having a meeting at that point. The city selection committee, several people were part of that meeting that were here. We got through all of our appointments tonight. I think that was a big success as far as that's concerned. And we'll probably be having another one of those meetings mid-year. But you can follow the notes. It'll be posted over the next week on what those appointments were. But we did make it through all those appointments. Next up is the Santa Clara County City Managers Association update. Christina?
Good evening. My name is Christina Gilmore. I'm an assistant to the city manager for City of Mountain View. I'm here this evening on behalf of City Manager Kimber McCarthy, Center of the Guards. The city managers group did not meet this month because this week they are at a conference in San Diego for the League of California Cities City Managers Group meeting. So they will meet again in March, and we will have a report out for you then.
Thank you very much. Okay. And next is the executive director update.
I don't really have very much to say, other than I'm working on convening the committees based on the priorities. So I'll be reaching out to everybody. And just as an FYI, I will be your staff person for each of these committees. So looking forward to seeing what all everybody does.
Fantastic. We didn't have any joys and challenges listed. I will just kind of open it up. Were there any joys and challenges that people want to say before we get to adjournment? We actually finished a few minutes early.
I would say there's a challenge. I like coffee.
Keep that in mind for future. Yep. Okay.
Because I see other people.
Yes, back in person makes it a little bit more hard. Okay, thank you, everyone. We will move to adjournment at 8:54 p.m. Thanks for everyone for being here. Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. Have a good evening. There you go.
Oh. Yeah.
Meetings.
Yay.
But you could also.
Oh, okay.
And then I'll be running. It'll be 10 years.
Yeah.
No, fair. I know. I'm here for a while. Yes, I got it. My cell phone's at. No, I did not. Thank you. My cell phone's on there.
It doesn't. Yeah, it says.
I tried.
You wanted it done, you're not making this. It's really hard, I'm yawning. Okay, member of East New York Committee shall consist of the mayor of each city. Here is unable to attend the meeting, the mayor shall designate another member. The mayor. It's different than. Yeah. I watched, they had like the number of the meeting online, or, afterwards, not necessarily live. Since we were. So do I need to, and, I really wanted to see how, stuff like we constructive. That was all that you needed. Well, it's fine. But maybe you don't want to, you might not want to watch. Normally for brown bag body, probably maybe or not, everybody's here. I want to provided right, but I had a 6 to 7 or something. I thought it worked slightly differently that like the voting people just show up, get to make the vote. That finished at 7 when the meeting. So I decided to take advantage of the last. I think the bylaws, association. Be there, I'll be there, you guys have been there. Yeah. Oh, right. To be careful. Right. Okay. It is kind of, but like, some people. The committee is comprised of the mayors. Okay. Yeah. They are unable to attend, they can delegate, right? Okay. That's, it's new. I guess the language, right? Should, and so every city should be the mayor is the member. And then the mayor, I mean, they can pre-designate who will go in their stead if they can. Right. Make it. So for example, like Mayor Gilmore can pre-designate such Jane as like the person that will always go in my stead if I can't make it. And then and have Kevin Park be the next person. Like they can pre-designate. Yeah. What happens is that some of them, yes. And that's the piece that they kind of can't. So like, they may well have done that. And we'll just let them know. Oh, right. I think we could probably write a short little letter, from. That's right. Probably under Shelley's signature, but like. Right. And just to sort of clarify that, like, and we can just. Yeah. As you know, right. And. Okay, I don't think it'll be hard. They will be. Yeah, right. And we can even do like, maybe, he's like. Probably I may set up a time to chat. It feels like we have like this and then the end of the. Okay. That probably makes it sooner rather than later and not wait. Well, it's true, because I got to, we did all our hard work. I got to, which I think are gonna be. And then